Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We are really excited to get you ready for the Natural Products Expo East. We're really excited for the first one in a year and a half that we'll be attending in person. So really looking forward to seeing everyone in Philadelphia. But before we head over, we wanted to address a few of the trends and some of the hot products that we're really looking forward to trying. And real quickly, I want to introduce myself. My name is Scott Dicker. I'm a data analyst at Spins. I do a lot of our market insights and trends that come out of the team. And I am joined today by a special guest, Jessica Maniscalco. She's our Senior Retail Insights Manager at Spins, and she does great retail insights, specifically focusing on natural and specialty products. So we will send out a trend recap guide. But the key things that we're going to go over are some themes and trend information, then also some of our brands to watch when you're going to the show. And just a quick note before we get started, I know it's still pretty crazy time, so there's a lot of switching up. So if the booths don't align with what the current booths are, we do apologize for that. It's a very fluid situation, but the brands are really worth checking out that we're mentioning. And with that, let's dive right in. Let's not waste any more time, and let's get into some of the themes and trend information. So some of the 6 kind of key themes and trends that we've been watching in 2021 and beyond. One of the biggest ones that we've been watching for a few years now is this plant-based demand. And so it really it's rooted in a few different things. There's still kind of a health halo around, the perception of plant-based being a better for you product. Also key sustainability attributes. And we're seeing this swapping from animal-based to plant-based kind of throughout the stores in traditional meat and dairy, as well as in flavors and other things like that. We're seeing clean labels with minimal ingredients. So people want there to be a focus on whole fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, really names you can pronounce, as I stutter to say that. And then as well as that, free of artificial ingredients, we have our Spins Vital Clean attribute that we're really watching. We're also seeing these immunity focused products. And so this has been really accelerated by the COVID-19 pandemic. And we're seeing it across food, beverage, as well as supplements, and really a lot of crossover in between that we'll get into. Also, if in the news and certainly in the products and brands we are purchasing, people want to support mission-based businesses. So maybe brands that are underrepresented communities, as well as people who stand for missions that they believe in, whether that's social mission, an environmental, or how they treat their workers. And of course, things have to fit people's diet and lifestyles. So there's a few different prominent diets that are out there, and there used to be a lot of like no foods but we're seeing kind of that change, and a lot of brands are really meeting customers' demand that they want to eat certain types of foods, and so now they're being formulated and having the recipes fit these special diets and lifestyles. And then another thing we wanted to mention, there's a lot of talk about plant-based, and for good reason, but we are seeing this rise in sustainable meat and dairy, where meat and dairy, they're leveraging some of their inherent attributes and also some of the key themes that they can make that plant-based can't make, specifically related to practices around humanely raising animals and how they treat them, as well as some of the regenerative things that they are doing to promote kind of meat and dairy in a sustainable way. And so with that quick summary, I want to hand it over to Jessica to start talking about our first trend and go a little more in depth.
Absolutely. And Scott, something I love about Expo is every year before we actually get into the trends in the show, besides plant-based, we've looked at many different key focuses that shoppers are looking at every year. And it's really exciting to see some new things that will keep our eye out when we go to the show in a couple weeks. So, the first thing we're going to talk about, as Scott mentioned, is plant based. And it's really no surprise here that plant based continues to thrive and will have a huge presence both with innovation and new entrants to the show. There's several key factors that are attracting new customers to plant-based options, including nutritional parity, lower sugar, use of natural sugars, cleaner label options, and even concerns about ocean health and climate change. Demand is rapidly expanding beyond the traditional burger analogs to new and innovative forms, which include things like seafood alternatives, cheeses, ready to eat protein snacks, and much more. Plant proteins that have close to nature ingredients, which include things like beans, soy, pea, those are really satisfying that demand for increased nutrition, great taste, texture, and even the appeal of how the products looked. The other thing that I would keep my eye on both at this show and in the future is alternative meats are continuing to evolve with technology. So think things like 3D printing, protein fermentation. These are all going to drive new innovation. New plant-based meats on the horizon that you could keep an eye out for are things with whole muscle proteins such as steak and chicken breasts. And you'll see within the data here that we've pulled that oat is really a winning base right now within plant-based, growing nearly 10 times that of almond bases over the past year. So definitely a very exciting time for oat.
Yeah, and sorry to jump in there, Jessica, but yeah, we're seeing oat really across all of those dairy alternative categories. It's really driving a lot of growth. It started off as really a milk alternative, but we're seeing, you know, a lot of oat yogurt as well, and the creamers. And so it's really an exciting thing. And I love what you're saying about the technology as well. I think we're going to see some of those, you know, those lab-based meats as a new kind of competitor. I wouldn't call those plant-based to be, but I think we're seeing that protein market really expanding, so to have a lot of options, and we could look into and see like blended products in the future as well.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about clean labeling. This is one of the biggest trends in food right now, and a lot of it has to come from continued momentum from both CPGs and even in restaurants. They've committed to cleaner ingredients and more natural attributes within their products, which has really helped this trend accelerate. Now, the definition of clean labeling is not well defined industry wide, but some of the ways that shoppers are thinking about it include being minimally processed, diet friendly, or free from chemicals and additives. Some hero categories that you can think about for clean labeling include things like dried fruit, snacks, pasta, enhanced beverages, and even things like plant based bacon having a really clean ingredient deck. As we look to the data to the right here, you'll also see within whole ingredients that popular fruits and veggies are really accelerating their growth quickly. I would definitely call out avocado here too, as you can see that growth dominates over some of the other whole ingredients that we're seeing across aisle.
Yeah, and it's really amazing to me the innovation that we're seeing with such few ingredients, like how they can be positioned so differently. So something that we've seen over the past couple of years is these like cheese crisps. And you know, we're seeing them positioned as everything from a cracker alternative to a crouton alternative to just kind of their standalone protein snack. And I know you're going to get into some of the diets a little bit later, but it's a great way for some of these kind of crunchy and savory snacks to hit kind of some of these higher protein, lower carb diets as well.
Absolutely. And one quick note I'll even add on the clean ingredient whole foods is shoppers are not willing to compromise on taste with this. It still has to taste good, has to have a good texture. So there's many components to this, but definitely is where the market is moving in many cases. The next trend we'll talk about is also no surprise, but immunity is very top of mind for many shoppers. As we know, the COVID-19 crisis has disrupted life around the world in countless ways. And now 45% of global consumers are focusing on food and beverage items where they have a claim of boosting their immune system since the COVID-19 started. So there's some different ways that brands can focus on that to really give that messaging across that the product is immunity focused. One of those things is using bright and exciting colors and citrus flavors. So think vitamin C for energy. Other flavors like vanilla or chocolate or cinnamon can signal warmth and comfort to support relief from feelings of stress. So, a couple other things I'll call out related to flavors and how you can really call that out with your brand. Some specific flavors that would be great to call out immunity include apple, carrot, ginger, blueberry, elderberry. And within beverages and food, as we're seeing these developments and all this innovation around immunity, we are really seeing a lot within beverages, specifically beverages and ready to drink teas and other functional drinks like that. So, aside from just immunity, if you look at the chart to the right, you'll see that shoppers are also continuing to focus on their cognitive, mood, and sleep health more year over year.
Yeah, and it'll be really interesting to see, as people are so focused on these preventative immunity kind of products, if these more seasonality ones like the cold and flu, if that'll have kind of the opposite impact on them going forward. I
Mhm.
imagine there will still be a market for them. Have you been seeing a lot of other ingredients? Like I know super mushrooms have been really big
Mhm.
and adaptogens. Have you been seeing those kind of across the um, in the other aisle and like the supplements aisle as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think supplements is always a hero category to look for what the next big functional ingredient is going to be. And sometimes it works its way into food and beverage or not. But the other thing going on right now within supplements that I know we've put out some content on recently is nootropics. So that's another thing people are thinking about when you're thinking about brain health and staying healthy and sharp in these times. So supplements is definitely an area that you'll want to spend some time in during Expo, while the next big key ingredient is definitely somewhere in there, and we'll just continue to see great innovation and starters there.
Yeah, I love how you put that because it's so true how we see these ingredients pop up as supplements first in like usually traditional supplement forms of pills and powders, and then they kind of work their way into first the beverage, the functional beverages as you've mentioned, and then into food, and then as we see with a lot of ingredients that have kind of made this push, a lot of proteins, probiotics, CBD as well, then there start to be in kind of all different types of food products as people use them more as a vehicle rather than the product itself. So that's some great insight right there.
Absolutely. So let so next I think you are going to take a turn to talk about sustainability a little bit.
Yes. So as we've talked a lot about, environmental impact, sustainability, it's not only the products and the ingredients themselves, but part of the product is also the packaging that goes on it. So we can't tell, the CPG industry as a whole, it's kind of it's hard to be completely sustainable when we're coming in the, these single use plastic containers. So that's why we're seeing a lot of innovation kind of across the entire store in packaging, where things that are more recyclable, like glass and aseptic cartons, and recyclable pods are really doing well. You see the difference just between the recyclable pods and the plastic pods. What a huge difference that makes is it really shows how people are being more conscious. And another thing that I think over the beginning of the pandemic, packaging and sustainability in that aspect took a little bit of a backseat as people were just trying to stock their pantries with the uncertainty. But as we're kind of coming into, I don't want to say coming out because we're not coming out yet, but into kind of this more prolonged period and people are getting more comfortable, we're seeing it play more of a role as people are going back and really doubling down on some of these packaging innovations. And one thing that especially in like the body care, we might see no packaging as we go to like more like shampoo and conditioner bars rather than plastic bottles, and also look for in that way some more like refillables as well.
So, Scott, with sustainability, we talked a lot about packaging. Are there any hero categories or aisles where you would say you can look for trends or different ways to think about packaging as you walk through Expo?
Yeah, so that's a great call out. So biodegradable packaging as well. I think the people who are using plastic, they're going to be using recycled plastic. I think it's going to become very rare and probably for good reason to see a lot of virgin plastics. And then I think these plastic pumps that we talked about, I think those are probably going to continue to go down as we look for more sustainable ways. And then really, I'm looking forward to kind of some of these products that they don't need packaging if they're that's why I looked in the body care category. Obviously, a lot of food still needs to be wrapped for health concerns, but a lot of these body care products don't. So we might be able to see very limited packaging or just get more creative um, than a traditional plastic wrapping.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point with things like shampoo bars and even ditching the packaging entirely, or even companies like Loop that are providing refillable containers of your favorite brands at home. So there's a lot of exciting stuff going on here.
Exactly, and this is specifically when we talk about sustainability and like ocean health and things of that nature. The plastic packaging is really a top concern. And kind of adjacent to that sustainability is really this transparency. So and this will include packaging as well, but let's focus on food for a second. We want consumers are really demanding this full transparency of their products. So they want to know where they came from. This could be supporting local farms. There's a lot of trades. Fair trade has been a common one when we're looking at things like chocolate and coffee to understand both transparency of where the products came from and how the workers are treated, labeled organic, labeled animal welfare. As we talk in a few slides, we'll get a little more into it. But as we go into kind of where meat and dairy is still winning, it's in these, certified humane, organic areas where we can really see what's going on. And I like how, Jessica, you mentioned a little bit earlier, how we're seeing kind of these whole fruits, vegetables, whole grains, healthy fats, and all these other whole ingredients. That goes back to that trend of minimalism, as well as fitting a lot of diets and lifestyles. And they're able to use these ingredients to promote a lot of these trends all at once. So we're seeing things like, beans and seeds being used as protein sources where they don't have as high of an allergen risk as kind of some of the nuts and other products that were traditionally used. So I love these alternatives, and that goes into that full transparency as well, and kind of blends into it, being really more inclusive of people with allergies as well.
Mhm. Absolutely. And with transparency, it's not only the attribution that shoppers are looking for on the shelf or some of these labels that you have, but really companies are also moving towards transparency throughout the supply chain in terms of how the product goes from raw all the way to shelf. So there's so many great aspects for this trend. And I'm so happy that it's becoming more and more mainstream and we're having these conversations.
Absolutely. And one of the things I think in the future, we're going to get more defined and more certifications around like what is local, as people are looking to source from different farms in the area. It could mean it means very different things for different companies. It could be, within 50 miles, within 100 miles, could be organic. And so I think this transparency of where everything's coming from, is it, farmed regeneratively, which is a huge trend as well. I think all these things are going to play a huge role moving forward, especially as the supply chain starts to settle down.
Absolutely.
And then Jessica, tell us a little bit more about kind of this beyond consumerism.
Absolutely. Let's talk about it. So, shoppers are choosing brands that are committed to improving the health of shoppers, the well being of animals, the planet, or the livelihoods of their workers. And more shoppers are starting to pay attention to environmental concerns and everything from government to daily business practice, how those are impacting marginalized communities. A more mindful shopper experience has been building for many years. And what I'm excited about is we are probably at the tipping point where this is becoming now the norm and not the exception or just a trendy thing a couple brands are doing. The need to address climate change, social inequality, and responsible business practices are probably not going anywhere anytime soon. You may see smaller brands at Expo really focusing on the individuals behind their businesses as well. And that messaging might come across throughout their marketing or even on their packaging. Some of the largest gains that you'll see in the information on the right are coming from businesses that are BIPOC owned or LGBTQ plus businesses as well. So I am super excited to see this creep more and more into mainstream, and definitely seeing a lot more retailers supporting this and bringing in brands that are focused on mission based, helping diversity suppliers. And there's a lot of great innovation at the show that I'm super excited to check out.
Yeah, and I think the big message here, for brands is to really tell their story. A lot of these brands have very unique stories, and their consumers, their customer bases, they're more likely to align with them. Of course, the products have to still taste good, be functional, all these other trends that we're talking about, but they're more likely to, be supportive based on the brand as well. And retailers, same thing, looking to bring in these types of products, so understanding the stories and promoting them that way as well.
Mhm. Now, we've mentioned diet and lifestyle, I think once or twice prior to this point, but let's talk about it a little bit more. Shoppers are really seeking opportunities to find options that meet their diet and lifestyle across every aisle of the store. So, no longer is it acceptable to be restricted to a gluten free set or a vegetarian set, but shoppers are expecting that there's going to be offerings and innovation throughout every aisle. So, as you think about the US returning to work and school this fall, on the go options are really going to be a key to winning in this space. Some hero categories that you can look to for winning include breakfast and snacking to get some really good quality innovation wins. Another category that I want to call out here is baking. So when you think about an indulgent category like baking, keeping within a diet or better for you mindset is probably not the first thing that comes to mind. However, baking ingredients are a key category where shoppers are now looking for some of those compliant options where they can really use them as a base for some of their meals and snacks. Speaking of that aisle within baking, sugar, let's talk about sugar. That's become public health enemy number one right now, and it has even been blamed for possibly increasing the risk of getting ill while it allegedly suppresses the immune system. You'll notice that in many of the diets that are listed on the right, they all have minimal or no sugars as part of their plans. And so, as a result of that, many shoppers are turning to alternative or natural sweeteners as a substitute. The other thing that I want to call out on this chart that I think is awesome and it's very interesting is that grain free is now the fastest growing diet on the right, followed by plant based. Not that many years ago, if you would have seen GF or grain free on a restaurant menu or on a label, you would have likely been puzzled. That is no longer the case. A gluten free and grain free lifestyle has become one of the most popular diets in the US. And in fact, one out of every five people are trying to reduce or eliminate glutens or grains, although only 1% of the population is celiac. So I think that really speaks to the power of this diet and how much traction that both gluten and grain free have gotten over the past few years.
Yeah, it really also speaks to kind of that health halo around, having those label claims on them, as it pushes people to think that they're healthier for them. As you mentioned, even though a very small percentage actually have celiac disease, this continues to be a driver for a lot of consumers. And then you mentioned that sugar obviously is public enemy number one. What are some of the other sweeteners that people are replacing with it? Or are we getting to a point where people are getting used to things just a little less sweet?
So I think it depends on the person and what diet they're following. We see things like natural honeys or dates used in a lot of snacking ingredients or in baking as a great substitute. I know me trying to be a little healthier, I use those too quite often in recipes. But on other diets like keto, you may not be getting any sugar as part of that diet. So it might be more important that you focus more on flavoring than the sweetness of it. So I think there's all different ranges, but you definitely want to make sure as a brand portfolio and as a retailer that you are making those options available within your assortment to all of the different palettes that you might be trying to serve.
Yeah, and I think one of the trends I did want to touch on, I know we're not dedicating it to it, but this rise in global flavors as well. So I think this is a good opportunity. There's seasonings and spices that could take the place of sugar, and those kind of are very flavorful ways to kind of adapt. And then I did want to call out that something like monk fruit we are seeing, as a lower calorie, something, and allulose as well, has really been a trending sweetener that has, lower the calories than sugar.
That's a great call out. Organic is something else that has been around for a long time, but we definitely want to talk about because there is so much great innovation at the show and so many brands with organic offerings that you're going to see it everywhere. So when you think about organic, it was once viewed as a niche category for health nuts and hippies, but today it's really a routine choice for millions of Americans. When you try to think of who the typical consumer is for organic, that's probably going to be pretty hard to pinpoint. While 99% of shoppers have purchased at least something organic in the past year. And consumers are going to continue to reach for organically produced food, beverages, and supplements because of their concerns regarding some of the things we've talked about with health, the environment, animal welfare. A really cool fact that I recently learned was in 2020, organic, which is typically an attribute to products that is challenged during times of economic turmoil, it grew within food and beverage by 13% to almost $50 billion. That is a huge number. And if you look at the long term trend, I know it's not listed here, but over the past 10 years, it's really been exponential growth. So as consumers are engaging with organic regularly, they're going to continue to look for additional benefit aside just the organic labeling for claims that we've talked about, like gluten-free, non-GMO, plant-based, grass-fed, et cetera. And all of some of those key attributes I just mentioned are also registering double-digit growth over 2019. So a really exciting time for some of these key attributes within health and wellness.
And I love how you position it there, where organic kind of used to be the only show in town for a lot of these consumers. And now we're seeing such a variety of other attributes, play a role alongside organic in kind of these natural products. So that's really interesting. And also it's great to see, organic maintaining some of this growth where, we saw during the pantry stocking phase of 2020, where a lot of people were kind of forced introduced to it based on what was on the shelf. And so, the big question was, will this organic products kind of maintain some of those shoppers? And so far they're showing that it is. And so that's really a great way. It introduced so many people who weren't buying organic products, and now there's a whole new market for it.
I think so. I think the other thing that's really cool to your point about that is there are so many great private label brands out there now with organic offerings as well. So before it was also, besides just being for health nuts or hippies, it
Yes.
was more for people who could afford organic. And now there's so many options to make it affordable for everyone, even if you're just buying a couple items that are important to be organic to you. So it's really been neat to see how this has evolved, even the 5 year or 2 year time scope.
Yep, that's great. And also, as we've seen with some consumer data, these natural shoppers are more likely to also purchase online. So for retailers, as you think about this, making sure that it's easily accessible which of your products are offered through your digital as well, to make sure that you're not missing out on any consumers, and it also let them know that you have it, so that it'll drive foot traffic to the stores as well. And so we also wanted to talk about, how meat brands are promoting sustainability as well. So there's a ton of talk, again, justifiably, around kind of this rise in plant-based and these other alternative proteins. But we are seeing a lot of meat brands, and pardon the pun, but not laying down and dying, right? So we're seeing them promote with different label claims. So labeled animal welfare, again, that's something, of course, a plant-based product cannot promote, but it's still a winning label claim that's drawing consumers over to it. Things like labeled non-GMO, labeled grass-fed are all growing more so than the meat categories as a whole. And they're even growing more at the 2 year over the 2 year. This is the 1 year over year, but we know that, that 2 year over year impacting from 2019, that's even going to be a lot stronger growth. And so kind of this number one innovation pursuit is regenerative agriculture. So, meat, and we'll get to dairy, but it's similar, showcasing that they can improve the soil, rather than, take away from it. So having those regenerative agriculture claims, and also it could be meat and plant blends. So we're seeing, some, ground beef with mushrooms, or what I think is coming, and we spoke about it earlier, is once we get kind of this, cultured meat as well, so that we could have some of those blended in together. And so, having their agriculture promote biodiversity, have good health practices both for the animals as well as the land, and really the manure management as well is going to be all really important.
Scott, I think you bring up a great point with some of the blends and the innovation that we're seeing there. We know that most of the new trial for plant based items is coming from people who are exercising kind of that flexitarian lifestyle where they're not ready to give up the burgers yet, but just trying to be a little bit healthier and maybe swap out a meal or two a week. Can you talk a little bit, if you are a brand trying to promote to kind of that flexitarian diet, or even a retailer making sure that you have a balance? What are some key things that you can do besides these label products to really continue to attract that customer?
I think, showcasing, understanding the reason people are going to plant-based, and then showcasing kind of what you still have to offer. So when you're talking about, we've talked a lot about sustainability and the environmental impact. So I think highlighting again, the number one is kind of this regenerative agriculture. And then another one, if you're a retailer, bringing in some of these more small farms and instead of some of these factory farms, I think that's a good way to kind of keep some of these consumers who are going for kind of that animal welfare, even if they're not, of course, if they're not, full on vegetarian or vegan. And then the other thing is to kind of promote these inherent health benefits of, their high protein and low carbs inherently. So therefore, they're fitting into a lot of these trending diets. So, even just a few years ago, it would be weird to see, a chicken or beef product that would promote high protein because it was just inherent. But now, it's something that they're promoting because it's really selling on label. And then, so taking kind of a look at dairy as well, we see some similar trends as well. Again, the 2-year over year looks better than just the 1 year, but we wanted to give you kind of a sneak peek of where we're at, and really promoting these kind of small and local and real and unprocessed. Those are really the key innovations with dairy. Uh, Promoting what the animal feeding practices are. Are they pasture raised? You know, Using, and one brand that we really like to call out is that Alexandra Family Farms. And I know that they use like the A2 milk, and they have the holistic farming practices. And I love how it's like through biodiversity, it's for plant species and biodynamic green pastures. I'm just reading from their website because I like it so much. Their promises singled out as healthy green fields and atmospheric carbon back into the soil. So really, that message is so important now, that you're putting back into the soil rather than take on out. And so that's really how dairy can keep winning. And let's get into a few other trends. I know we won't have time to go as deeply into these, but they are really worth mentioning.
Absolutely. So the first one that we want to talk about, we mentioned a few slides earlier, but traveling the world through food and beverage. And with consumers sticking closer to home, global flavors really offer a culinary adventure in lieu of traveling, especially when it comes to less familiar countries and regions. The globally inspired flavors make products seem more exciting and more exotic, and they will be more consumers will be more inclined to try these flavors as they continue to experience lockdowns or bans on travel. There is also a real appreciation from regional ingredients from parts of the world that are often overlooked. So, some flavors that are emerging right now, including interest in West African flavors, East and Southeast Asian flavors, Latin American, and even flavors from the Mediterranean. So, all of those offer an opportunity. We talked about it in relation to sweetener, but in general, with all diets and lifestyles, to really spice up and try something new without having to go far from home.
Yeah, that's a great one. And also, something that we're seeing a lot of is meal kits. The convenience can't really be overstated, especially a lot of people are suffering from kitchen fatigue. You know, they may have started cooking for the first time when they were forced at home. And so with life kind of starting to speed up again, and you know, restaurants are back, but maybe you're not comfortable as well, we're seeing this growing trend towards kind of these pre-made meal kits and health food boxes that save time but still allow families and individuals to eat healthy from home. So meal kit delivery, it's projected to become a $20 billion industry by 2027. Many of these companies focus on local food, sustainable practices, and cater to a variety of food preferences and diets. So all things that we've talked about before, and it's really prevalent here as well.
Absolutely. And one quick note I'll add to that is within meal kits, you'll now see that many retailers are offering their own version of a meal kit in store with displays where maybe the meat and the spaghetti and everything's there for a quick dinner too. So it doesn't necessarily need to be a subscription or delivery service for meal kits and the idea of it to be available to everyone when they're shopping. The next trend is around permissible indulgence. And I don't think I need to tell this to anyone, but there is a desire for healthier versions of classic comfort foods, even ongoing. So think of things like breads, ice creams, hard seltzers, things that kind of help people soothe their levels of stress. This trend towards home baking, we saw that a lot during the start of COVID, but that has continued to carry throughout 2021. And I think with all the decadent flavors and some of the fun innovation that's going on in the baking aisle, that will continue well into next year as well.
And then gut microbiome. So approximately 25% of global consumers suffer from some sort of digestive health issue. And so the pandemic has accelerated this interest, you know, in being healthy and a greater understanding of the role of gut microbiome in general with health. And gut products have been proven to address certain metabolic issues like and help with weight management, maybe immune function, and other things really related to all health, kind of this internal health. So watching out for gut microbiome is another big trend.
And then finally, upcycled foods. If there was one on here that I could really blow out, I love this trend. And even thinking about Expo West at the end of spring, there was so much cool innovation around this. So, thinking about food waste, 33% of food produced for human consumption, or about 1.3 billion tons every year, is lost or wasted. And rises in packaged products that use neglected or underused parts of an ingredient is one path to try to reduce some of this. It helps maximize the energy used to produce the product, the transportation, and even just using those ingredients that would have otherwise been wasted. We've also seen this kind of expand into some new areas of the store. I know Regrained is a great brand. They started out with snacking, and now there's innovations going into pasta using like some of the byproducts of breweries to turn it into some of those components for pastas. So it's just fun to see how this has gone from one very niche segment to all sorts of areas in the store, whether it be produce or juice. So I can't wait to see where this trend is next year and if it will be big enough where we highlight it a little bit more in depth.
Thank you so much for that, Jessica. And so with that, we're getting into our brands to watch. We'll go through a few different categories and just give you some kind of quick hits on them. So Jessica, do you want to start us off with a beverage?
Absolutely. True North is a seltzer company that I'm super excited to stop by during the show. They are plant based, zero sugar, zero calories, zero artificial sweeteners, and they also have a play on immunity. So not only the low and no sugar trend, but health wise as well, something to look forward to. They come in great flavors like watermelon mist and white peach pear tongue twister there, but I'm super excited to try them, and they've been getting a lot of buzz before the show.
Yeah, that sounds great. Another one that I've been liking recently is Riot Energy. It's another plant-powered energy drink. You know, it has 160 milligrams of caffeine coming from green tea and also having that 100 milligrams of theanine. You know, I've really found personally that this is kind of a great ratio for me where it gives me really more of a jolt from the caffeine, but it doesn't make me too jittery. And I think that having the theanine in there really to kind of prevent the crash is really important to have more of a calming effect as well, while it's still being alert.
Absolutely, that sounds great. Let's look at a couple of personal care picks. For me, it's going to be hand in hand. So we've talked a lot about sustainability and mission-based products, and this is one that combines both of those things. They're in a sustainable package, which is beautiful, by the way, but they're also vegan, made from very natural ingredients, and they are mission-based as well. So they are very focused on humans' rights abuse. So you can have this great soap in a reusable bottle and also help support a great cause at the same time.
And I want to check out Earth's Kiss. It's a biodegradable face mask. They're not tested on animals, and they're certified organic. And they make masks focus on self-care being healthcare.
That sounds relaxing.
And then going into snacks, I've been looking at midday squares. I know I've talked about them in the past, but I really love how they are both high protein and high fiber, really making for a perfect snack. I really like their fudge yeah flavor, and it's really a great addition to this fresh snacking segment that we've been seeing growing, where traditionally shelf-stable items have become perishable, and really develop their own competitive set where people look for this fresh snacking in the refrigerator. And as people return to making more trips to the store, I think we're going to see an even more expansion of this segment.
I'd like to talk about a condiment I'm super excited to see, and that's good food for good. So, speaking of diets and lifestyles, this is organic. There's no sugar added to their ketchups and sauces. And again, a great mission based company. So, they provide one meal in India through every one product purchase. So, good for you and good for their mission as well.
Very good. And when we look at frozen, especially frozen desserts, one of my favorite finds that I found at a trade show earlier this year was Dream Pops. They really include superfoods like mushrooms and matcha into these frozen novelty desserts. And so it's really showing how versatile some things, like they have a lion's mane product within the frozen these frozen dessert bars, and they're delicious and functional as well. So it's really showing how versatile. There's really no category that you can't add these functional ingredients to.
That's a great point. You can get some nutrition while still enjoying a snack. Within frozen, something I'm super excited about is Julian's Collie waffles. So we all know Julian's is a great, authentic European inspired type of company who makes all sorts of goodies. But at Expo West, they debuted these Collie waffles and Collie waffle sandwiches, and they are so cool. They are gluten and grain free. They have 5 grams of protein, and with the sandwiches, they're made with cage free eggs. So thinking about that on the go breakfast, it is good for you and quick as well.
All right. And then finally, when we talk into some of these baby products, I hope I'm saying it right, Bose baby colognes. It's really interesting to see, colognes that are made for babies and kids, and they're infused with things like prebiotics and vitamin B3. So that's kind of something that I'm interested in checking out.
Yeah, and thinking about supplements, I'm super excited to see Ohm Mushroom Superfood. And Ohm has really always been a leader with new innovations within that ancient wisdom of single species mushrooms. This specific innovation that they have is their newest superfood blend, and it's designed to promote immunity, vitality, cognitive health, and energy. So, most of those trending health focuses. So, definitely check that one out.
Awesome. And then also I'm looking at Instant Vita. They have very unique kind of spray vitamins. And, it's the claim is to promote and aid in faster absorption. And that also being a spray completely removes all of the extra ingredients in a product that are not the one that you're purchasing them for. So this is one I'm also very excited to be checking out. And so with that, we hope that you feel ready for Expo. It's great to be back in person. Thank you, Jessica, for running us through some of these great trends. And please contact us for some more information. And we really hope to see you at the show in Philadelphia.